T-ball is a game for 5, 6, 7, and some 8-year-old kids, and it's a chance to let them play where they don't have to worry about being hit by a pitcher. We play a pitcher on the mound, but the kids hit off of a little rubber, or in most cases a little stick with a rubber tee. The ball is placed on it, and umpire hollers play ball. A ball is caught in the field, and what you do to control it or to make sure the umpire calls timeout is all they have to do is hold the ball up. Parents are so thrilled with watching their 5-year-old or 6-year-old child hit the ball, get a run. Half of the base hits are on errors anyway, and it's just a thrilling game to watch.
Well, I think right now that the jail situation is one that must be remedied. It has to be done. Now, I think they're probably under a court order to do something about this, and I feel that it must be done.
Traffic was backed up in both lanes of the eastern bypass as Montgomery police kept passers-by safely away from the leaking tanker. Firemen sprayed a flame-retardant foam on the spilled fuel. Reports indicate the tanker was making a U-turn out of the Warren House apartments when one of its mud flaps broke a valve. Firemen found they couldn't replace the valve, so they had to let the gas flow. Luckily, the tanker is divided into several compartments, so only 2,000 out of 12,000 gallons of fuel leaked out. A nearby drainage ditch was immediately dammed up to prevent the gas from entering the city's sewer system. The gas was later pumped out of the ditch. The leaking finally stopped, but the foaming and the safety checks continued. The rising temperature hampered firemen's efforts. One fireman, overcome by heat exhaustion, had to be admitted to a Montgomery hospital. The fire department reports traffic is now flowing smoothly in all lanes of the eastern bypass. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
The facts have not revealed that he has done anything wrong, and he would be a great asset to the judiciary. Fred Gray deserves support because of what Fred Gray has done. History has been changed in the state of Alabama in terms of civil rights, in terms of public accommodations, in terms of open housing and jobs and public schools. I think now is the time we need to show this tremendous man how much we respect for what it is he's done for us here in this state and in this nation. Facts have not prevailed in terms of his not conducting himself in a professional manner as a lawyer. I think that's public information. But again, what we're dealing with here is politics. We're dealing with some elements of racism. We're dealing with some elements who just don't want to see power that would be realized in a federal judgeship.
Unlike many of the nation's employers, the construction business is doing a lot of hiring these days. The heavy industry employers remain optimistic about the future, even though their new hirings are at a 4-year low. But while the nation's economy may seem to be getting worse, Montgomery's hiring trend isn't. Montgomery employers are, in fact, hiring more.
Montgomery businessmen are much more optimistic in their hiring expectations for the next quarter as compared to the national trend. Montgomery expects to hire 27% more as compared to the national trend of only 19%, whereas Montgomery businessmen expect a 13% cutback and the national trend expects a 17% cutback. So you can see that Montgomery is a lot more optimistic now than they were.
Ms. Johnson's figures come from an employment outlook survey that's conducted by Manpower Incorporated. The survey is a measurement of employment plans for the nation's permanent workforce. Ms. Johnson says a survey of local employers also shows Montgomery's hiring expectations were greater this year as compared to the same time last year. In addition to the construction business, more hiring is also projected by durable goods manufacturers and service industries. Ms. Johnson says companies planning cutbacks in hiring are educational institutions and those in the retail and wholesale business. Ms. Johnson admits the chance of a deeper recession will definitely affect hiring practices all over the country, including the South. But for now, Montgomery can boast of holding a truly unique economic position. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Alabama's death penalty statute doesn't give the jury any discretion. In other words, Alabama juries can either find a person guilty of a capital crime or set him free. They can't return a guilty verdict to a lesser charge. The decision has set off massive litigation. The state's Attorney General's office is asking the Alabama Supreme Court to rule on the constitutionality of the entire law and to make a decision about the future of the 35 men and 1 woman now on Alabama's death row. Various legal groups opposing the death penalty altogether are filing motions to set their death row clients free, or at least remove them from the solitary confinement and put them in with the general prison population. Although the U.S. Supreme Court's decision only affects Alabama's statute, a number of other states are probably paying close attention to the proceedings. In the summer of 1976, the High Court upheld the death penalty statutes in Georgia, Florida, and Texas. Almost immediately, many of the 35 states and District of Columbia who have a death penalty statute revised their laws and modeled them after any of those 3 states. Alabama was one state that didn't. But for those states, like Ohio and Alabama, who have yet to revise their laws, they can look at the ruling and take note of what problems Alabama had. Likewise, for any of the 15 states who don't have a death penalty statute but are considering one, they can look at the ruling and know what not to include in a new statute. Alabama Attorney General Charles Graddick says he's hoping to get a death penalty law similar to Florida's passed during an upcoming special session of the legislature. Chris Grimshaw, Montgomery, Alabama.
According to the Department of Health and Human Services, only 12% of the prescriptions written in the U.S. use the generic names for drugs rather than the brand names. Drugs marketed under their generic or chemical names usually cost less than the same medicine sold under brand names. The agency which administers the Medicare and Medicaid programs estimates that if 20% of the doctors changed 10% of their prescriptions to generics, consumers could save an estimated $120 million. Although at a time when many doctors are fed up with governmental red tape, the last thing they want is to be told what kind of drugs to administer to their patients, whether it be generics or brand names. Many doctors won't even consider the use of generic drugs. Some say they aren't effective.
On medication, the importance of it is just too important a thing to buy some second-rate foreign imported drugs that don't do any good. I'm opposed to just saying, well, all medicines are the same. I don't feel like that's right any more than why don't we have generic cars? I mean, you know, why have Fords and Chevrolets and Plymouths?
And what about pharmacists?
Some of the generic drugs do not dissolve in the body as they should. They do not give the patient the proper medication.
While Dr. Poteet and pharmacist Brock are in opposition to the use of most generic drugs, there are other physicians and pharmacists who favor their use. We'll find out why in our next report. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
I'm sure the governor would want us to love America by being... There cannot be reward without effort. There cannot be safety without a struggle. There cannot be reward without effort. There cannot be safety without a struggle. And there cannot be peace without strength. There cannot be security without sacrifice. And we can have none of the above without God. It's time to reorient. And rededicate ourselves to those things that have made this country great.
The ABC Board have cooperated with us in every way, and we've cooperated with them.
Major.
The Sheriff's Department have done the same thing, but the city police have never done anything but harass us and bother us, and frankly, I am sick of it. And until the young adults of Montgomery do something about this man that is up there carrying on like he does in the Civic Center and everywhere else in Montgomery, so that they can't even have a concert in Montgomery County, we're going to have to eat it.
Okay, thank you.
And if you don't put that on...
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Wait a minute, wait a minute now.
Norman.
Wait a minute, hold it. See, first of all, don't threaten me.
I'm not threatening you.
Wait a minute. First of all, don't threaten me. I know how to do my job, okay? And before you start telling me anything else, I know that you don't allow blacks in here.
That is absolutely untrue.
No, I know that.
Hey, you wait a minute.
Don't put your hands on me, lady. Don't touch me.
That is absolutely untrue.
You said you wanted to make a statement, you made it. It'll be on TV, okay? Major, could you just give us a comment on what happened?
I'm going to let Lieutenant Foster do it. He knows more about it than I do.
That's not what they tell us.
Well, you're telling a tale.
You don't know how to use the shell. What's slipping off?
Well, I don't hate the transportation system. As well, we're not one to say that this is a very meaningful occasion for us, because this industrial park, the site that joined forces with the city in this project, it will be a joint venture. We are getting the
reputable business locate here that this park will fill up with industry like parks of... But in addition, the manpower...
which goes near us, and it is, of course, across the street from Moulton Airfield. So it's an excellent site for industry.
A tenant for the building, so that hopefully by the time the building is complete, we will have our first business operating in the park. We think further that once one reputable business locate here, that this park will fill up with industry like parks of...
Franklin Box and Freight is the name of the company. In Oxford, Alabama, they now have a fantastic...
On June 20th, the U.S. Supreme Court that Alabama's death penalty law doesn't give juries the discretion of returning a guilty verdict to a lesser charge. Juries could find a person guilty of a capital crime or set him free, nothing in between. That was in the case of Gilbert Beck. Since the Beck decision, legal papers have been shuffled at just about every level. The Attorney General's office is asking the state Supreme Court to rule on the constitutionality of the entire law, and anti-death penalty groups are appealing the convictions of some death row inmates. This latest Supreme Court ruling deals only with the death row inmates who have appeals before the Supreme Court, all of them overturned on the discretion issue mentioned in the Beck case. All of those cases have been sent back to the state Supreme Court. Among those cases remanded for review are the convictions of Timothy Dale Crawford for the 1977 murder of his father, sister, and niece in Houston County, and the conviction of Clyde Cade for the 1977 murder of Geneva County Sheriff Red Sizemore. All of the other death row inmates who have appeals of their convictions in progress are before state courts or lower federal courts, but it's expected that their appeals will be affected by the Beck decision. That means that all 45 people convicted under Alabama's 1976 death penalty statute may need to be retried. All of this adds more confusion about the future of Alabama's death penalty law, which could undergo changes in the upcoming special legislative session slated for this fall. It would give legislators opposed to the death penalty altogether an opportunity to try and kill Alabama's death penalty law. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
An estimated 1,000 Montgomeryans signed the door, which homebuilders say demonstrates the number of citizens concerned about the housing industry in Montgomery.
It's just about dead. Without the government subsidized loans, the builders in Montgomery, Alabama wouldn't be doing anything. If the builders weren't doing anything, your subcontractors, your material houses, everything would be out. We'd be a depressed area.
Ali says President Carter's policies are responsible for the home building crunch, which in turn affects many other industries. He says the door conveys the message that the country's economy hinges on the building industry, and the key to survival is less government regulation and more government aid. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
It was reported that he took a hostage and forced the man to drive him around up in this area. The dogs and all the people on the search team were brought up here and spent several hours, as you know, searching the area, all the roads in and around the subdivision, the fields, farmlands adjoining, and no good track was found. And about 2 o'clock, the intensive search was called off in this area. They will leave 3 or 4 units here just to patrol the area just in case, but they feel there's no good reason to believe he's still here.
Don't have very far to go. We've got an outstanding fire department, and we just hope to make it better.
You all been coming in and helping us in this time of transition. Thank you very much. Chief General Gillett.
During that period of time, we're going to have full participation by a broadly representative committee.
At present, what sort of person are you looking for to lead you now, the 80s, and you're sort of at a milestone, I guess you might want to call it?
We need the support and assistance of the board, of Chancellor Volker and the systems office, of the alumni and friends of the university, of the students, the faculty, and administrative personnel to get on with the mission of the university.
The special hearing was called in response to a motion filed by Seib's attorney asking Judge Thomas to order Evans to testify at the Louisiana hearing. The hearing is on a petition to block Seib's extradition to Alabama. Attorney General Charles Graddick represented Evans at the hearing.
The judge ruled properly that his appearance not only was not necessary material, but would have been illegal under the laws of the United States.
Graddick also charged the motion was just an attempt to get Evans to reveal his evidence against Seib. The Attorney General says he expects Seib will be extradited back to Montgomery to face vigorous prosecution on charges of lying to the grand jury. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
It is believed the fire started in or near this room at approximately 5 o'clock this morning, 2 doors down from where fire officials found the body of Coach Paul Lambert. Well, it's really hard to
to recall all of it, but somewhere between 4:45 and say 5:15 or 5 o'clock, Herman Williams woke up and woke me up, and we thought that our air conditioner was smoking. And we checked our air conditioner right quick like and found that it wasn't, and we found out that the smoke was coming from the hallway under the door. And, we were scared to open the door, so we tried to get out the sliding glass doors, and the doors wouldn't open. So Herman took a chair and hit the sliding glass door 3 times, and on the 3rd time the entire window fell out, and then we climbed out the 2nd story. And by the time that we got out, we realized that it was a very serious fire, and that most of the people were already out. And at that time, we started looking for Coach Lambert and couldn't find him. And later on, we found out, of course, that he was still in the room and was unable to get out. And I know it's a tremendous loss to myself and, of course, the university, and quite a tragedy for his family. And we just feel deeply for him, and just hope that some way that we can find a way to get through these hard times, these tough times. Just the short time that I'd known him, he'd made quite an impression on me, and it didn't take me long to realize that he was a super person and a tremendous individual.
Alabama's chief prosecuting officer says he wants a unified consensus on a new death penalty law from the district attorneys before it's introduced in the legislature.
And we need a unified front, both from the DAs in this state, law enforcement, Alabama Law Institute, and the legislators. We've got what we consider some very good sponsors, and we'll probably have some very strong co-sponsors.
Graddick says his proposed new capital punishment law includes the best portions from the Florida and Georgia laws, which have been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. Last week, the High Court struck down a section of Alabama's 1975 death penalty law, which gave juries only 2 possible verdicts, innocent or guilty, with a recommended sentence of death in capital murder cases. Graddick says a proposed new death penalty law for Alabama would allow juries to weigh circumstances to determine death or life in prison for those people convicted of capital murder. The jury would render advisory decisions while a judge would determine the final decision. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
We're going to talk about 3 or 4 alternatives.
The office at 1606 Madison is headquarters for the resettlement program in Montgomery. Funded through Catholic Social Services, the program handles migration of refugees from Laos, Cambodia, and other parts of Indochina. Pat Alston is the office's full-time resettlement representative. She says the U.S. has agreed to take the refugees for humanitarian reasons, that many of them worked for the U.S. and helped American military men during the Vietnam War. But she says a few Alabamians fear the refugees.
Their style of living is certainly different from the American style. I would call that basically fear of the unknown, of what the people will do. As I mentioned before, using the legitimate refugee process, no criminals are coming in, or no persons that have health or life-threatening diseases are being allowed in. So certainly the fears that people have are unfounded.
Ms. Alston says the biggest problems for the refugees are lack of skills and ignorance of English, but she says she's forming English classes and job services to help acclimate the growing number of Indo-Chinese. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. How many? This is your...
I don't know, we want it that strong.
Would you be interested if there's...
So I do that. Draw its pay. No wonder David Matthews stepped down and become the dean. That's where your problems are.
Well, here's the way I understood your question now.
Right. An expert that knows a lot of things. I don't know, we want it that strong.
Into the coaches and athletic.
As you know, our top priority under any conditions is going to be the improvement of salaries of our present faculty, and we're not going to let anything that other than a catastrophe that I cannot foresee interfere with that.
Representatives from Alabama's predominantly black colleges agreed their respective institutions aren't getting much money out of the CETA program. In fact, it said that black colleges receive 0.3% of all CETA funding in the South. Those at today's conference felt it was a very accurate figure. The problem? Many feel it's a breakdown in communication. The colleges don't know how to apply correctly for the funds. CETA funding in Alabama totals about $137 million. Those funds are used for youth programs like classroom and on-the-job training. And the black educators feel more of that money needs to go to their schools because they say the money is especially vital to Alabama's black youth.
Some of them depend very heavily on the summer program. People really depend on these monies for food and substance. So. Plus, they're getting a great deal of training which will lead them to be independent people and do without the subsidization of federal government.
The CETA conference continues through Wednesday afternoon. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
We have somewhat the same records in number of years. I liken it under the two federal judges that are being considered for this, and all is in order, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. I didn't think that was germane, but the choice that these are the two that I think will do that.
So you will provide us then with, or those of us who are interested, with background data on the one.
So they had nothing to offer.
7 opposed, 1 motion carries.
And they paid $1,500.
Recommendation on this particular.
5 under the law that is submitted to me could serve as chief or deputy chief. That's 4th of July. Let them have some work.
Back in 1978, when Beasley was running for governor, one of his supporters, Brooks Holman, worked with Beasley's brother William to secure $125,000 for the campaign. But later, Holman said he needed something to back up the loan. A second mortgage on more than 1,000 acres of farmland owned by Beasley in Barber County. Testimony showed that Holman and William Beasley worked on that mortgage. Beasley testified that he never saw, signed, or authorized anyone else to sign that mortgage for him. The mortgage was signed by Beasley, but it was a signature machine print, not Beasley's handwritten signature. Beasley contends the mortgage is invalid. Later in 1978, Beasley was planning to sell the property, but couldn't because of that second mortgage. Attorneys for Beasley tried to show that there was a possibility that Beasley's name was placed on the document later, and that his signature was put on the mortgage without his permission. Here's where the testimony in the case takes opposite directions. Holman contends that Beasley promised him collateral amounting to $100,000 if Holman would release that purported mortgage he held on the property. Holman says he was promised $50,000 and the deeds to some other property in Barber County. But Beasley's story is different. He says he never promised Holman money or deeds. Beasley testified that he urged Holman to settle the mortgage issue because of what Beasley called the forged signature. And Beasley says Holman has never said Beasley owed him money except through filing this suit. Neither side sought a jury trial, so it will be up to Judge Gordon to decide which side is telling the truth. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Long, blinding, muggy days. Though the worst heat waves have been dry, most are periods of high temperature and humidity, a combination that puts the body's cooling processes to the test. Your heart works harder, increasing the flow of blood through the body's surface area, so the warmth of the blood can be released into the air. If the air is warmer than the body and therefore won't take excess heat from the body, perspiration does most of the cooling as it evaporates. But on muggy days, when the air has about all the water it can hold, perspiration evaporates slowly and does a poor job of holding your temperature down. Add to this the loss through perspiration of dissolved chemicals which are important to the normal functioning of the body, and you can see that heat waves bring more than discomfort. They bring danger as well, especially to those already weakened by illness or age. If you're heading west soon, or just in case a heat wave develops here in Alabama, these safety tips are certainly worth noting. First, slow down during unusually hot weather. Your body cannot do its best in high temperatures and humidities, and it might do its worst. Heed your body's early warnings that it's unable to cope with the heat. The moment you begin feeling ill, reduce your level of activity and get to a cooler place. Dress for summer. Lightweight, light-colored clothing reflects heat and sunlight and helps your body maintain its normal temperature. Put less fuel on your inner fires. Certain foods, notably proteins, increase the heat generated inside your body and increase water loss. Don't dry out. Heat wave weather can wring you out before you know it. Drink plenty of water while the hot spell lasts. Stay salty. Unless you're on a salt-restricted diet, increase your salt intake when you've worked up a heavy sweat. But remember that the American diet tends too heavy on salt. Many people get adequate salt during hot weather from their normal diets or by slightly increasing their salt intake. Avoid thermal shock. So your body can adjust gradually to warmer weather. Treat yourself extra gently those critical first few hot days. Vary your thermal environment. Physical stress increases with exposure time in heat wave weather. Try to get out of the heat for at least a few hours each day. If you can't do this at home, drop in on a cool store, restaurant, or theater, anything to keep your exposure time down. And don't get too much sun into your skin. Sunburn makes the job of shedding heat through the skin that much more difficult. These heat wave safety rules are common sense. They should be easily remembered. Use them as this Alabama summer heats up, and you'll be doing all that you can to see to it this hot season can also be a happy one. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weather Beat.
Brantley is 63 years old and has been a city building inspector for 17 years. Testimony at a personnel board hearing reveals he was fired after these events. On June 4th, Brantley visited Senator Howell Heflin's office in Montgomery to ask about federal programs pertaining to land he owns. He and the senator's aide, Tom Coker, got in an argument, and Brantley told Coker he could see the senator's aide was ignorant of the facts. Using profanity, Coker told Brantley to leave his office. After Brantley left, Coker called Mayor Emery Falmer and described the incident to him. Falmer instructed his executive assistant, Jack Hogg, to find out about the matter and to order Brantley to apologize to Coker. Hogg testified that Brantley wouldn't talk about the incident without his lawyer, nor would he apologize. So the next day, he fired Brantley. The city's attorney said Brantley visited the senator's office in a city car on city time and introduced himself as a city building inspector. Brantley said he was on his lunch hour and had stopped on his way home, that he had made it clear he was asking about a private matter. The city attorney says the city has a duty to police its employees when they introduce themselves as working for the city. Brantley's attorneys say the building inspector made it clear to Coker he was on personal business and claimed the matter never would have come up if the disagreement had been with someone other than a U.S. senator's aide. They said the city had no cause to fire Brantley because the incident never interfered with his official duties. And his attorney said Brantley should be reinstated because this is the only country where the king or ruler can't do what he pleases regardless of the law. The board ruled that Brantley will report back to work on Monday but will not be paid for the 30 days he's missed. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
36-year-old Charles Williams of Prattville has been charged with murder in connection with the case. Police are still looking for a second man they say was his accomplice. Prattville Police Lieutenant Gerald Dennis says that Williams and the other suspect plotted to kill Robert Hopkins of Montgomery on June 14th. Lieutenant Dennis says the evidence indicates all three had been out drinking earlier that night. Later, one of the men allegedly took Hopkins' money, attacked him with an axe, and then laid him under a tractor-trailer rig in the middle of the road and ran over him. Hopkins was taken to Baptist Hospital, where he stayed in the intensive care unit for 2 weeks. He died yesterday. After the initial investigation, Prattville police thought the incident was a case of hit and run, but later they unearthed the new evidence that leads them to believe it's part of a murder. Lieutenant Dennis says Williams is being held without bond. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News, Prattville.
Within the past 2 weeks, 5 inmates have escaped from the Staten Correctional Facility. All but one of the 5 men have been recaptured and are back behind these walls. We asked Board of Corrections officials why a sudden rash of escapes and what's being done to prevent more.
Some of the contributing factors at the Staten facility is the inadequate design of the institution to house a medium security prisoner. When the security was designed, it was designed for a minimum security inmate.
Hopper says steps are being taken to prevent more inmate escapes. Hopper says as compared to last year, inmate escapes from Staten are down, but that doesn't make Elmore County residents rest any easier.
We stay uneasy all the time because we don't know what might happen.
I really don't feel threatened, but you never can tell what might happen.
Strzok says a warning device needs to be installed to alert residents when there is an escape. Other residents we talked to said they've simply learned to live behind locked doors at all times. From Elmore County, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The resolution adopted on a 10-to-1 vote by the council urges U.S. District Court Judge W.B. Hand of Mobile to allow next Tuesday's election for the office of mayor and city council president. The candidates are hopeful their race can be decided next week.
This decision will be oncoming tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We will have council in Mobile. They will present the resolution that was passed by the council this morning indicating a willingness on all of the people in Selma to go to the polls on the 8th of July to vote for the mayor and president of the council.
Ballots have already been received. The city has bought it. They spent 75% of the expense allotted for this election. And the heat of this election, to call it off at this time, candidates have rented buildings through July. They've got signs they've had here. They'll have to move out of their headquarters. It'll be a total fiasco.
Well, it'll just mean we're all in the same boat, that everybody's just about run out of money and about out of energy. But if he rules that, we'll just have to take it as it comes.
Do you see any good reason why he might want to delay it until September?
No, I really don't. The ward lines don't affect our race at all.
A suit has been filed by several residents in Ward 1 who claim they are underrepresented on the council after its increases in population. Selma's 5 wards elect 2 council members from within the ward. They may now be split into 2 districts with a candidate elected from each. Parties in the suit will appear in court and submit proposed new districts based on an earlier plan approved by the City Council but rejected by the Justice Department. Reporting from Selma, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
The old-time ceiling fan. Once they were everywhere. You used to turn on the ceiling fan to turn off the summer heat. They went out of style with the advent of the air conditioner, but now they're back and more popular than ever because people now realize there's nothing better than an old-fashioned idea that still works and saves you money. Some manufacturers claim a ceiling fan can cut summer cooling costs almost in half. Some models use as little electricity as a 60-watt light bulb. The cost of operating the fans can run as low as 5 cents a day. Depending on the rate of air delivery, a ceiling fan can also reduce skin temperature about 7 degrees, and they don't pull dust into a house like some attic fans. Ceiling fans are just as helpful during the winter when they recycle heat by pushing rising warm air down to the cooler parts of a room. There are many different types and styles of ceiling fans, and the prices range accordingly.
So, if cutting energy costs is your goal this summer, an old-time ceiling fan might be the answer. And after all, they're just plain fun. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.